All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Echo Live. Thank you guys so much for joining me here today. My name is Sierra, and I'm one of the educators here at the Michigan Science Center. Now, today, as you might be able to tell, I am all bundled up because we are deep in the throes of winter at this point. It is incredibly cold outside. In fact, I don't know about where you guys are, but here in Detroit, it's about 18 degrees Fahrenheit. So what's the temperature like where you guys are right now? What's the Fahrenheit or the Celsius if you're coming to us from outside the United States? But what's the temperature like where you're at? Here, it's pretty cold. 18 degrees Fahrenheit is no walk in the park. It's even colder than our usual standards here in Detroit, Michigan. Generally, in January, it's about 32 degrees Fahrenheit outside, which is actually the freezing point of water. So as you guys might imagine, that means that it's pretty cold out there. So what do we do when it's cold outside? What are some things that you guys can think of that you can do when it's cold outside? And by us, I mean like people. So what do human beings do when it's cold outside? Well, I can tell you one thing that I do when it gets cold outside, and that's bundle up. So I wear as many layers as possible. I've got gloves, I've got earmuffs, I've got my hood on. I do not like the cold, so I'm doing everything I can to avoid it. So that's usually how humans deal with the issue of having cold weather. But what do animals do? Do they have the option to bundle up like we do? Well, maybe if you have a very pampered pet dog or something who has cute little gloves or cute little like a hat to put on. But what about other animals? What about polar bears? Or what about whales? What do they do to keep warm in the winter? Well, that's what we're going to explore together today. We're going to look at different adaptations that animals have that help them to stay warm. Now, adaptations are when animals evolve to have certain traits that help protect against their environment. Now, these adaptations don't happen all at once. They evolve over constant generation of different animals. So let's take a look at how different animals have evolved and adapted to their environment. And we're going to do that by using my ice bucket here. So you can't see it, but there I have some water in front of me that is filled with different huge chunks of ice. Honestly, just looking at it looks really, really cold, and I'm not looking forward to sticking my hand in it. But that's what I'm going to do in the name of science. I have a couple of different bags that I'm going to test out. And each one of these bags is filled with a different material that animals might use to help keep themselves warm. Now, this first one is a control. A control is something that we can measure off the other ones based off of. So this is basically going to be our baseline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hand inside of our control bag. I'm going to stick it in the water, and then I'm going to measure the temperature. And this will give us something to compare all of our other results to. All right, I'm actually going to do this with my left hand. All right, I'm going to dump it in the water, and then I'm going to see what the temperature is like inside of the bag. All right, in 3, 2, 1. Oh, this is not pleasant. I don't recommend this. Luckily, I'm doing this for you guys so you don't have to. But inside of the bag right now, it is, let's see, saying about 62 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's pretty cold in here. If we let it go for even longer, oh yeah, it's getting chillier and chillier. Ooh, okay. So that's our control. So we're going to be comparing all of the other bags to this. So we have 62 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's see if these other bags are going to be warmer or colder than this one. So the first bag that we're going to be looking at is actually made up of feathers. So different feathered animals use their feathers to help keep them warm during the colder seasons. In this case, what we're looking at right now are some puffins. Puffins, or the clowns of the sea, like I like to call them, will survive in Arctic temperatures using their feathers. They have a special sort of feather called down feathers, which conceal hot bubbles of gas, and that is able to keep them warm. However, when they go into the water, these down feathers, I should say, actually sort of collapse into the rest of their body, and those pockets of warm air go away. So it can be harder for them to stay warm when they're underwater. All right, so let's try out our feather bag. As you see here, I've actually stuffed it pretty full of feathers at this point. I really didn't want to get cold. So it might be kind of toasty warm in here. Okay, putting my left hand in the bag, and now I'm going to stick it right in here. Okay, so let's see what the temperature inside here is like. It is looking pretty warm at this point, which is pretty good. A lot warmer than our last bag. My hand is actually pretty comfortable. I can barely feel the cold in this case. So let's see. It looks like this time we're getting a temperature of about, ooh, it's much, much warmer here, about 70 degrees. So considerably warmer than it was for our control bag, which is great. Okay, so let's put this one to the side. I definitely was a big fan of this, not as cold as it was when I first put my hands in here. Now we're going to take a look at our next bag. So the next animal that we're going to be looking at is an animal that doesn't rely on feathers. It actually relies on using fur. So here we have some cute little polar bears, and we are going to replicate what a polar bear might go through by using this bag full of fur. So in this case, similar to the feathers, there are pockets of warm air inside of the fur that can be used to help keep the polar bear warm. Okay, let's see if this is warmer for the polar bear than it is for our feathered friends. I'm going to display our polar bear over here. All right, once again, I'm going to stick my left hand in the water in 3, 2, 1. Oh my gosh, so at this point, I can barely even feel the cold. It's so much warmer. Okay, stuck it a bit too far in there, got some water leakage. Let's try that again. Yeah, as long as there's no cold ice water in here, it's actually a lot warmer than it was previously with the feathers. So I'm enjoying this one even more. Okay, so this time we're looking at about 73 degrees in here. So warmer than it was for the feathers and much warmer than it was for our control. All right, so the final animal condition we're going to be looking at is from my personal favorite animal of the bunch. We're going to be looking at animals that have blubber. All right, so here we have a picture of a walrus. It looks so cute. I'm a big fan of big, gray, kind of squishy looking animals. And we're going to see if the walrus in this case is better able at keeping its heat inside or insulating its heat better than the previous two animals that we looked at. All right, so now we're working with our walrus. I'm going to put on our blubber bag here. Ooh, it's much heavier than the other bags, which bodes well for me. Okay, so my hand is in the blubber bag. I'm going to dip it in the water in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so at this point, I can barely feel the coldness of the water at all. It actually kind of feels the same way that it did when my hand was outside of the water bag. Now, let's use our temperature reading to see how warm it is. Okay, so right now we are at a toasty 78 degrees. So this blubber was actually able to insulate much better than the fur or the feathers. Now, the interesting thing about the walrus is that it's not only relying on the blubber, but it actually has a layer of fur as well. So it's doubly insulated against the cold temperatures of the Arctic region. All right, so now we got to take a look at how different animals adapt to these cold environments we have to deal with. Unfortunately, we don't have a very, very thick layer of blubber like our walrus friends do. So we'll have to stick to layering up in a lot of different clothing for now as we survive the cold winter temperatures. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. We will be doing another Echo Live next Wednesday like we always do at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So we'd love to see you there. Thank you so much for joining me today and have a good rest of your day. Bye, guys.